Welcome to Ownership, the podcast where we have conversations about capital formation in crypto and beyond. I'm your host, 8bitpenis, and this is Season 1, Episode 0. Today, I want to talk about why ownership matters, why I think capital formation in crypto is broken, and why this podcast exists in the first place. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but the short version is I believe that startups and capital formation in crypto are broken today on both the founder side and the investor side. And I don't think that's controversial. I think most people can feel it. On the founder side, raising capital in crypto is strange. I mean, it's not necessarily hard, but there's friction. There's friction everywhere. Raising a traditional round can take months, sometimes even longer, years. You're talking to funds, lawyers, banks, regulators. It's slow. On the other hand, raising capital on a permissionless platform or a crypto launchpad can take days or just hours sometimes. It's an incredible unlock. I mean, it's faster, it's global, it's accessible, but this speed comes at the cost of structure. A lot of founders raise quickly without clear ownership, without accountability, without a real relationship to the people funding them. On the investor side, most people aren't actually investing, they're just speculating. And they don't own anything, there's no claims, no rights, no protections, it's just all exposure. So the question becomes, how do we make this better? How do we give founders access to early capital when it matters the most without turning tokens into glorified casino chips? And how do we give investors something real, something fundamentally anchored, instead of just narratives and vibes? That is the core of this podcast. I want to have candid conversations with founders, investors, builders, lawyers, anyone thinking seriously about how we fix this. I'm not talking about hyped up conversations. I'm not talking about marketing. I'm talking about real conversations about incentives, trade-offs, and structure. But to understand where we might be going, I think it helps to look backward. Because equity didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was invented to solve a real problem. Going back to the 1600s, one of the most important moments in capital formation was the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, one of the first joint stock companies. Before that, most ventures were private. They were local and very limited. You raised money from a very small group of people you knew. The joint stock company changed that. It allowed people to publicly fund large, risky, long-term ventures. And so equity mattered because it created ownership, enforceable claims, and an alignment between the capital and the outcome. And it wasn't just a financial innovation or a societal one, it was a legal one. And for centuries, equity became the dominant way we fund businesses because it worked. Now fast forward to today, we now live in a global economy. Startups are global from day one. Talent is global. Users are global. But capital formation is still mostly local, fragmented by borders, regulations, and institutions. That mismatch, it creates inefficiency. People with great ideas can't access capital easily. People with capital can't access early opportunities easily. And crypto tried to fix this. For the past 10 years, crypto has been trying to figure out tokens. And honestly, most of them failed, especially as ownership instruments. And it's not because the idea was bad or because the execution was incomplete. No, actually, it was because of the execution being incomplete. Because tokens rarely represented real ownership. They didn't give control. They didn't give enforceable rights. They didn't give accountability. So they became speculative assets instead. And, it wasn't entirely crypto's fault. For a long time, we had an adversarial SEC. And and anyone who tried to tie tokens to real businesses meant lawsuits, enforcement actions, and massive risk to the business. So a lot of founders just avoided it completely, or half did it, or did it in a way that was maybe extractive. And the result was a decade of experimentation and a lot of scams that are still rampant today. What's interesting is that I think we're entering a token renaissance now. Because for the first time, tokens are starting to be treated not as memes or just coordination tools, aka governance tokens, but as financial primitives. I'm starting to see that the things which used to be purely social contracts, things that you just trusted your team to do, are now being formalized into legal contracts that can sit alongside on-chain systems. Things that can't be enforced purely through code are increasingly being enforced through law. And this combination, code where possible and law where necessary, feels like the direction ownership is moving in. So, yeah, and why now feels different is because the environment has changed. Because the regulation is slowly becoming less hostile, and all the institutions are engaging instead of dismissing. Obviously, none of this is perfect, but it is finally serious. People are finally taking us seriously. So, one thing that I strongly believe is that markets are inefficient when information is scarce or asymmetric. And crypto markets are notoriously inefficient. One of the most useful things you can do is surface information. Explain how things work, show the trade-offs, let the people think. And this is another reason why this podcast exists. I'm not telling you what to buy or what not to buy. I'm just trying to help you understand these structures that are behind these new primitives. I want to help you understand what you're owning, you know? And just to close off today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about what you can expect in the future, a little bit more on the structure of the whole thing. Um, the the show will be mostly weekly, most likely Mondays, and episode 0 is just the start. Episode 1 might not drop immediately next week. It might be a little bit pushed out. But once we start, it'll be consistent. In the first season, I will be covering and I will be talking to the Ownership Coin founders in the MetaDAO ecosystem. They will be the first guests on the podcast. I'm very excited for the first one specifically. Of course, I'm excited for all of them, but the first one is going to be very, very, very cool. And I cannot wait for you guys to see it. And I can't wait to talk to them. And so if you have any questions that you think I should ask these founders and the MetaDAO ecosystem, let me know. For now, I want to ask the questions everyone's thinking, like, why did you do it? Would you do it again? What worked? What didn't? Why this structure? And what would you change? But I also want to, talk a little bit about governance. Why futarchy? Is it actually better than token voting? What is the difference? How does it work? What are the trade-offs? And, I think the show will most likely have several seasons with different topics. And for the further seasons, I want also venture capitalists, real investors, and I want to talk to them because they have seen capital formation from the traditional world, or they have a different experience of how things work. They have seen what works and what doesn't. And perhaps, not perhaps, I mean, most likely we're going to disagree on a lot of things. And that's fine. That's actually why I want to talk to them, because that is a point. I want to hear the people out who haven't raised in the ownership structure or something similar. I want to know why they didn't do it. I want to know what the friction is, and maybe find out a better way to do it. And if you're listening and you have feedback anytime, just let me know. Leave me a comment wherever you're listening. The podcast is going to be available on YouTube, Spotify, and Twitter. And so if you have any suggestions or anything, you can DM me on Twitter at 8bitpenis. And yeah, this podcast is as much about the conversation as it is about the answers. Obviously, I don't think we're going to fix everything overnight, because that would be delusional. But if we can have better conversations, more honest conversations, surface better ideas, and push the ecosystem towards real ownership instead of just speculation, then crypto might be in a much better place, in a couple of years from now. I mean, that's the bet, right? Because in the end, and this is the whole thesis of the whole thing, is that owning is winning. that is the motto. And that's what this podcast is about. So, yeah, I'm very excited to cover everything that's coming up. And so, thank you for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.